Okay, so in 2014, I decided to move to Mumbai from Dubai for work, which at that time I really thought was a lateral move, going from one city to another. I was terribly wrong. I have never been to Mumbai before. I barely spoke Hindi, and I didn't know anyone there, didn't have any family. So pretty much everything I took for granted up to that point became a struggle, from housing to accommodation to water and electricity. And honestly, I hated my first year I was in Mumbai, and all I could think about was like going back home to Dubai. So 2 years later, in August 2017, I get a call for an inspection at a client's place, and it's a routine inspection. So I get ready to go, and at 1 p.m. I get a notification on my phone: Mumbai to experience worst floods since 2005. Now, in 2005, Mumbai experienced one of the worst floods in Asia. The water had risen up to the third floor of buildings. Thousands of people died, and the whole city came to a standstill for 3 days. So naturally, I checked with my project manager, and he was like, "Hey, listen, this is like super urgent. The client really needs it by the end of the day. Why don't you go? But tell you what, worst case, I'll arrange transportation for you." I was like, "Okay, cool, thanks. I'll go." And then I went, and then when I step out at 3 p.m., the water's already up to my knees. Yeah. Um, so I start looking around, right? And the first thing I do is I call my project manager, no answer. And then I start to look for Uber, right? And Uber is completely dead. Train, bus route, everything is shut down. So I'm starting to think what to do. And I see a mall nearby. I was like, okay, cool. I'll go to the mall and take shelter there. And as I enter the mall, all the shops are either closed or are in the middle of closing down. And I was like, okay, wait, what if I sneak into Levi's and just hide there, right? And then I could stay there overnight. And just as I'm thinking that, a false ceiling comes crashing on the floor. And I was like, okay, maybe this mall is not built for floods. So I started thinking, I'm like, okay, wait, I have a friend, Omik. He lives about 3 kilometers away from here. And I was like, worst case scenario, that sounds like a distance I could actually swim. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. Yeah. So I take my phone, I check the Google Map route, and then I call him and I'm like, hey, I need to come. He's like, yeah, okay, cool. And then I cut the call and my phone dies. And I was like, shit, okay. And then I somehow gather the courage to go to the front of the mall. And I look in front of me, and the water is now up to my waist level. And I look behind me, and the security is starting to push everybody. So I take a breather, and I'm like, I close my eyes, and I'm like, Krishna, Allah, Jesus, who is up there, please help. Please show me the light. And then I open my eyes, and literally a random stranger walks up to me, and he's like, hey, I'm Roshan. Now, Roshan literally means the light in Hindi. So I was like, oh, cool, thanks. Yeah. So he's like, hey, I'm Roshan. I see you standing by yourself. Are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm trying to get to my friend's house in Mulund. And he's like, you know what? I'm also going to Mulund. Why don't you just join me? I was like, okay. I was like, worst case scenario, if he's a kidnapper, at least I'll have a place to stay. So I was like, yes. And then Roshan and I start walking, and I see a lot of other people just like Roshan and me walking, right? So I start to build some confidence. And but I see the road ahead, and it's really scary because there's a lot of abandoned cars. There's a lot of potholes in which people could fall and die, and there's electricity cables running overhead that could fall and electrocute. So I asked Roshan, like, hey, aren't you scared about all this? And he was like, he looked very calm, and he was saying, don't worry, Mumbai has a way of taking care of itself. Now, I didn't know what it meant. But I walk 100 meters, right? And then I see a lot of daily wage laborers just standing in the middle of the road. And they are basically guiding everybody away from potholes. Like, because they work near the road, they knew exactly where all the potholes and manholes were. It's super strange because they could have gone home like everyone else, but they stayed to make sure everyone else got home safe. So I keep walking, and Roshan's house comes first. So and I tell Roshan, hey, thanks so much. I'll try to go from here. He's like, no, wait, let me try to help you. And then he stops a random food delivery guy on his bike. And he's like, hey, this is my brother. Could you drop him till the end of the road? And to my surprise, the delivery guy actually said yes. So I was like, okay, cool. And then I get on his bike, and then we are going. And the guy's name is Ismail, right? And the first thing I tell Ismail is like, hey, thank you so much for doing this. But why are you doing this? Like, why don't you just go home? You have a motorbike, right? And he was like, oh, I had 2 more food deliveries. Either this guy was like the most committed Uber food delivery driver, or he was an adrenaline junkie. And I asked him, so why did you do this? And he's like, oh, I'm saving up for my sister's wedding, and every penny counts. And I didn't know what to say at that point. And I see him struggling to maintain balance. So I'm like, thank you, Ismail. I'll walk it from here, but thank you so much. And then finally, after 6 hours, I make it to Omic's house. And yeah. And then, yeah, I have some food. I call my parents, and then I'm just sitting there, right? And I'm sitting on the floor of the house, and I just start bursting into tears. And I wasn't sure why I was crying. Not because I was overwhelmed at having survived, which I was, but I think it was just this innate gratefulness to a city that I had hated for so long. Mumbai would have drowned that day if it wasn't for the kindness and compassion of so many people who did the right thing despite the personal cost. And in a way, Mumbai felt like a giant family that was able to take care of itself. And I, for the first time, felt I was part of that family. That night, Mumbai went from a place I lived to a place I call home. Thank you.